So if you are checking the market right now, we can see the following companies. So if you want to launch something into space, a satellite, then you can have this market. So there are the traditional service providers, there are the commercial service providers, so SpaceX and Northrop Grumman, and also there is the even and growing small-sat launcher market, which is completely building up from venture capital funds and sometimes from NASA money, but mostly it's driven by private sources. So, and also if you are checking the launch fees, we can see that there is a huge variety for costs included. Okay, Arianespace, it's quite different here because in the case of Ariane 5 and also on 6, you can put two satellites on the top of each other. So at least they are cost competitive because they can sell two things. So that's why they can be a lot more expensive. And also you can see that most of the launch vehicles, at least 3 of the launch vehicles, are quite old and experienced. So usually the saying is that you need 20 launches until you can find all the bugs and errors in your platform. So sometimes rockets are exploding. But we can see that now it's quite reliable, what we can find everywhere. The second thing is that we can see the capacity, cargo capacity, and we can find a huge amount of tonnage. But if you are checking the market actually, we can find that the typical cargo is less than 3 or 4 tonnage. So you don't need enormous rockets anymore. So the 3 tons of cargo, it's much more like when you are transport moving people or cargo to the International Space Station, but not satellites anymore. Satellites are like 1 tons and less than 1 tons. So you don't need such capabilities. Okay, I had to change this Japanese platform because they retired the previous H2B, and tomorrow they will launch the H3, so that's why we can see that they will launch. Just right now we don't know if it will be successful or not, but sooner or later we will find out. And also there were no data about the Chinese Long March 5, unfortunately, that what is the price, because it would be really interesting to see, just it's not available. And also what we can see, the Indian Space Research Organization, they are moving more and more on the private market. So even they were able to get some share from the constellation of OneWeb. So it's a satellite internet with huge bandwidth and also with low latency. So like using a mobile phone just with a dish like this size, but anywhere on the planet. So now they are starting to increase their operations, so hopefully it will happen soon. And in the commercial sector we can find SpaceX with a lot of launches. So I remember that last year when I had to put the same numbers, it was 130 something. So in the last year or during the last year, mostly they were launching something into space in each week. so they are scaling up a lot. And also we can find the landings. So I remember that the first attempt for landing happened in 2016. Then the first launch of a landed first stage happened in 2017. So at the beginning I was able to see so many nice explosions. So everything was covered with real-time streams and explosion fireball here and there. And suddenly once they were able to land without failing miserably, then they were able to maintain this cadence. So since then, maybe there were 2 failures, but none of them were problems, at least at the level of landing. So in the case of launch, mostly it happened, or mishaps happened during the first years of the platform. And we can see that, yeah, cost competitiveness. So if you would like to compete with SpaceX, you have to cut back your launch cost to $50 million. So still it's not full reusability, but they are providing. They are just able to land the first stage on a drone ship or in Florida, and also they are able to recover the fairing, because the fairing is still $7 million, so it's worth to rent a boat and to chase the falling back fairing and to take it out from the water. But the second stage is not recoverable because the speed is too high, and they don't have enough fuel to bring it back safely and to land it somewhere. So they were thinking about it and they abandoned the idea because it would overcomplicate stuff. In the case of Northrop Grumman, so right now they are at the version of 230 plus in the case of Antares platform. So they started with Antares 100. Just I mentioned already that they were using this heritage Soviet lunar program engines, which were shelved. Just on their 4th attempt, it was exploding on the pad during launch. It was exploding and then falling back to the launch pad. So after that, they had to clear it out, and they realized, or NASA asked them that please don't use these engines anymore because of corrosion and so on. So then they were changing to modern Russian engines. Mostly they are using the same engines what is used in the Atlas V, so they were just using derivatives. But the problem is right now that they are not able to purchase. So at least in the case of Atlas V, the CEO published at least a report or statement that they acquired all the engines already before, because Atlas V will be also retired soon. So they have enough engines, but maybe this is the end of the Antares platform because they don't have engines anymore. There are rumors on the market that maybe they will buy engines from Firefly. Just also these engines are really new, so that's why I'm a bit skeptical. And smallsat market. So I mentioned that the first one was Rocket Lab. So it's a huge company from New Zealand. So if you are checking their streams, launch streams, then they have this cute accent from New Zealand. But they are also operating in the US, so now they debuted with their new launch platform in Virginia, and they are focusing on small satellites. So there's 300 tons are launched, and the problem is that at the beginning everybody was thinking that it will be a fast-growing market, and it's not. So we can see that after 4 years, their launch number is 30, because 33 times they were launching, just 30 was successful, and they had to change their whole business strategy. So they had to pivot, so they had to move towards building components for satellites. And on the other hand, the head of the company, Peter Beck, had a saying that he will eat his hat if they are building something which is reusable and a big launcher vehicle. So a year ago he had to eat his hat because they started to recover the Electron launch vehicle. So because it's a small rocket, at least the first stage is small, and also it's made from carbon fiber, so it's relatively light. They are able to catch it with a helicopter. So once it's falling back, then at several heights, it's using some parachutes, and after that this parachute is grabbed by a helicopter. They tried it 2 times already. Once, the first time they were able to catch it, but after that it started to behave in a strange way, so they had to let it go, and after that they will fish it out from the sea. After that the engine was still operational, so they were running an engine test on brake pedal. It was working nicely. Second attempt was not going well because the rocket was eating next to the helicopter, and it was not. It was falling into the sea again. So still we can see that how this platform will be operational. But on the other hand, they realized that they are too small for the market. So practically what the market needs is something which can launch 2 tons, 3 tons into space. Not a big rocket, not a small rocket, but just a medium launch vehicle. So they started to develop the neutron vehicle. Right now we have no idea about the specification of the engine, or no video about engine tests and so on. They were able to provide some pictures about how the platform will be operational. It will be reusable, so it can land, the first stage can land on its own and on the land, not on a drone ship. Because also, in the case of drone ship, what is used by SpaceX, the problem is that having such a vehicle, even if it's in the harbor, you have to spend $40,000 in a month. So it's quite expensive to land on sea. Just in this case, you can spare fuel. So that's why you don't have to carry as much fuel. And so Rocket Lab is trying to pivot out again, so they would like to develop a bigger vehicle. We will see. And they are also publicly listed, so that's why we can see that the share prices are going down gradually. So the market is still not recognizing this growth potential, unfortunately. And speaking of potential, Astra Space. So Astra Space tried to overtake Rocket Lab because they were building a rocket which has similar capabilities with a cheaper price. Just the problem is that things went sideways, literally. If I think, well, we have some videos. No, no videos. Okay, so there was a launch attempt when Alpha was supposed to launch stuff upwards because there is space, and it was going sideways because something happened with the fuel connector or something, so the engine was going sideways, so they got the nickname of Space Epsilon because if it's not SpaceX but Epsilon, then yeah. So now even NASA cut back their funding, so they were exploding so many NASA satellites, small sats, that their launches were moved to other companies. So Alpha or Astra is also a publicly listed company, but we can see that the share price are close to zero, and people are saying that they can survive, just maybe not. I will be skeptical in this case. Okay, Firefly. Firefly is also a newcomer to the market, and they are trying to specialize in the medium segment. So you can see that their cargo range is 1 tons, and at first time they were exploding because they have 4 engines, and 1 engine was exploding mid-flight, and after that the whole vehicle was disintegrated. Second attempt was quite a success because they were able to reach orbit. Just the problem was that their original plan was to reach 300 kilometers, and they were able to reach 200 kilometers. So they were able to deliver their satellites, but after that the satellites were falling and burning up in the atmosphere within a day. So we can say a success because they were not exploding, but it's a failure because satellites were not that happy to burn up in the atmosphere. Obviously, you can get a huge discount when you are in the beta testing phase and you are using satellite or launch vehicles in this way. Just still, it's quite useless. And the last one is Virgin Orbit. And yeah, sorry. So Firefly also tries to sell engines for different companies. So this would be their main objective. So they want to have their own launch vehicle, but practically they are an engine building company, and this is what they would like to sell. Okay, and last one is Virgin Orbit, which is part of the Virgin Group. So this is Mr. Branson's company, but so practically what they are doing there, that they have this jumbo jet, so Boeing 747, and they are putting a rocket under the wings. This is the Launcher 1 rocket, and after that they can launch half a ton of cargo into space for $12 million. The problem is that the first attempt, the rocket was failing and disintegrating, and also the last time when they were doing it, and they were doing it from British soil, or at least airspace, and it was also failing somehow. So right now they are grounded, and investigation is going on that what happened there. And the problem is that also they are listed on the market, and we can see that the prices are going down. So what we can see, that if companies are listed on the stock market, right now their share prices are not increasing at all. So the market is not expecting growth in the future. And which company is growing like a lot, they are not listed on the market. So even Musk was saying several years ago that he don't want to list SpaceX publicly because he can get a lot of funding from venture capital funds. So several weeks later we will check that what is the current state, but we can see that in the previous years, in each year they were able to collect more than $100 million from different investors. So they don't need to be listed publicly. Also, there were rumors that once they are able to build up their satellite internet platform, so the Starlink constellation, which stands from more than 3,000 satellites, and they were able to collect a lot of customers from overall around the world. Now it's the last quarter of years it started to become profitable. So, and there were rumors that once it became profitable, maybe they will cut SpaceX to two pieces. So there will be the launching part, which remains as SpaceX, and Starlink will be privatized through an IPO on the market to provide an exit opportunity for the investors. And we will see. But now, since they start to become profitable, because now they have a customer base more than 3 million people,